open this. So okay, so everyone's able to see this, right? Most probably everyone's able to see this. And today we're going to have a small question answer session. It's a surprise quiz, but I think it's it's going to be based on what we're going to learn today. So it's more like a quiz based on the class rather than a surprise quiz on the entire course. So therefore, and the connective particles and grammatical case that so connective particles that as we have talked is one of the bound morphemes. So what do we mean by bound morphemes? We have defined bound morpheme word as the type of word which require another name to be associated to it to give a full meaning, because it by itself is not able to give a meaning. So when I say full meaning, it doesn't mean that it can give half meaning by itself. No, no. The thing is that it cannot convey even a single meaning when it is written by itself. Because then the problem arises that if we say like, oh, the half meaning is from the associated name and the half meaning is from the bound morpheme word, that means that the bound morpheme word should have a fixed meaning. And this is where we are going to have a lot of trouble, especially with the connective particles that we have said multiple times when it comes. And another thing that I wanted to clarify is that there are many particles in Tibetan. Not all the particles are connective particle, and some may be connective particles but are not in the 30. And these will be discussed thoroughly. This will be discussed thoroughly after this text. And some, if we come along, if they come along, some other connective particles, and at the same time, if I remember these, then we are going to do it alongside those particles. Otherwise, everything will be done after the 30. After the tree of excellent speech, so that uh, we can understand that the particles are not only the particles that are in the 30, but there are other particles which are, and some of the particles, as we know, came during the second language revision. Some came at the third language revision. So, yes, definitely, I will share those names and dates and important figures in the group. I was supposed to do this past week. I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to do it. I'll do it this week. Definitely, I will do it this week so that you'll get the important dates, important figure, important people, and then important events, and then those three revolution or revision, including some of the examples of the word that were introduced, some of the words that were banned, some of the words which were reintroduced in the duration of the third revision, and some of the rules pertaining the post suffix ta, tata. So everything I'll make sure to write it in one file, because just like it was pointed out in the group, that's when I send a lot of individual messages, it tends to clutter, and then you see there's a lot of trouble finding it again and again. So I'll make sure that I'll make an individual file which will be uploaded to the Google Drive, and then since everyone has provided your email address, so everyone will receive the file in your Gmail. So I'll make sure that I do that. Okay, so let me just quickly brush through the topic, that is the connective particle, because last time it seemed that we didn't had enough time to talk about it. So connective particle, by the name itself, in Tibetan it is called tik te, te, meaning something that is used with, associated with something that is met with another name. So tiba. And these particular words, what they are bound morphemes, meaning they cannot have meaning by themselves. So never associate any meaning to the connective particle or any of the particles. Any of the particles. So when I say particles, we're going to talk about few of the particles in the gender signs. Like so therefore some of the important particles like duk, yin, these particles, or ge, these particles we're going to talk about in the gender signs, but maybe we'll introduce it before that. And a small clarification that we had during past like a question a few days ago, it was about de and ge. Ge is a particle, de is a verb. So two different things. De, you can associate a meaning, that means want. Ge, it will change meaning according to the sentence, according to the degree of urgency. Sometimes it could be an urgent sentence where you can say, oh, this means need. For example, if it's say kola gedu, which means he needs blood. In that case, it's an urgency and it becomes need. Then last time in the script, it says shame sadu sagu samchung. In that case, it's not that urgent, which means that there's not much of an urgency. Thus, we understand that in that particular case, ge can be understood as want. So it changes. It's a variable. It changes with these sentence, context, words, urgency. So therefore, make sure that you don't associate meaning to these particles. They change accordingly. So connective particles especially are one of the main teachings of, it is one of the main teachings of the 30 and probably the most elaborate one. These connective particles function as conjoining particles. So what they do is they join two things. It could be, so when we say two things, we normally talk about narratives. And narratives and statements could be either a name. So name here is the Tibetan, the concept in this particular text. So name as term, and then it could be a phrase, it could be sentences, it could be half a sentence, it could be continuation of a sentence, it could be, in some cases, some of these particles are capable of to be pervasive over an entire paragraph or entire piece of writing. So therefore, narrative is a very pervasive word. It's a word that is pervasive to a very big concept. So therefore, you can definitely understand that it could be two names or it could be a paragraph or a sentence. But in most cases, it's part of two sentences. So they conjoin them. Normally, they conjoin them. But we'll know today that some of them actually doesn't do that, but still they're called connective particles. But we'll go to that through that in a bit. So their main function is to conjoin, to join two portions of a sentence. Sometimes these sentences could be, for example, one sentence that we have been using for quite a while. It's we have been using that particle sa, which is a particle which tells us about the, let me go here. So I hope this is where we have the, yes. So let's say let's say gyak pe kala se mi tup. So in this context, it's not Tokong, sorry. Tokong kya e kala se mito. Because so it means that one is unable to eat because one's stomach is full. So we see that in this particular sentence, we have sa, which is a connective particle. It's a conjoining particle. What it does is that it joins this two part of the sentence. The first one is the consequence, or the first one is the reasoning, and the second one is the current circumstance. So reasoning and circumstance. So two part of this narration. So one is unable to eat. Why? Because one is already full. So you see that this particular particle, it conjoins these two parts of a sentence. So this is the function of these particles, as we see these particles. And then these particles, which are the connective particles, they are used, they may be names or they may be sentences depending on the usage case. And this is going to be a very important concept regarding the connective particles, which talks about different usage case. There are many different usage case. You can use it in many different ways. So many different usage case. So therefore, Tunjur is one of the more important terms here. One of the more important technical terms that we're going to use with this text. It says, what type of sentence required this particle to be used? What type of sentence required this particle to be used? Then there are, then we will understand that the other term, that is tajur, can be understood by this classification. So the connective particles are of two types. The first one is the dependent connective particle, shen, other, wang. The influence or the power is, or the dependency on other. Wang means something that has taken influence over, or something that has taken which has the leverage in this case. So these particles depend on other. When we say other, we're talking about circumstances which are arising from words or names which are not the connective particle itself or the usage case. So dependent on what? Dependent on external factor, which is neither the connective particle nor the usage case. So it's dependent on those circumstances. And independent connective particle, rangwa means independent, meaning the leverage or the power is, or the ability to decide is, or the ability to follow is within the particle itself. So independent, so not dependent. So dependent connective particles are connective particles that connects to a name on the basis of suffix letter. So it's suffix letter, so it depends on suffix letter, which is jinju, or it may depend on the post suffix letter, which is yangju, or in some cases, it may depend whether the word doesn't have a suffix letter, which is ta, meaning the which refers at this meaning. At this point, it means the jinju, the suffix, and if there's no suffix, it means ta me, negation of the existence of suffix, ta me. So this type of connective particle is used based on suffix letter, and these type of dependency is known as dajur. Da meaning the basic sound, and here when we're talking about the basic sound, we're particularly talking about the suffix letter. So dajur, so associating or joining on the basis of the basic sound, which is the suffix at this moment. And the other dependency is the usage case. Which type of sentence does this particular particle is used in? Independent connective particles, on the other hand, doesn't depend on suffix letter. So they do not depend on the suffix letter. They can follow any name that they deem okay to follow, or they deem important to follow. So they do not depend on suffix letter. to connect to a name, but still, they are used on the basis of usage case. And that's the reason why there are different connective particles, because of the different usage case. If all connective particles could follow any type of sentence, then there won't be any concept of usage case. So therefore, usage case is something that is universal for both, universal for both dependent and independent particles. It is a criteria or a factor on which the particular particle is used in a sentence. So in some sentences, it's not used because it is not the usage case of that particular particle. So most of our studies will be revolving around this, Tunjur. So Dajur and Tunjur understand that Tunjur is the usage case. There is more variation, and this is more difficult in comparison to Dajur. Dajur is a simple set of rules. And if you memorize the Tree of Excellent Speech, you'll have the entire Dajur in the back. So you'll be able to memorize, you'll be able to remind yourself of these concepts with the memorize. Therefore, this is the reason why I'm pushing the memorization on you all, because the moment you memorize every one of these lines, the thing is that each of the dajur, which is associated with each particle, is already in the text. So you can just recite it, and then you can recall them anytime you want. Lasso. So these are the two criteria. Now, the connective particles. What are the connective particles? So, sorry, we know what's the connective particles. Now, introducing the connective particles. So there are 8 dependent connective particles, and these 8 are recompound particles, particles used in place of la. Particles possessing e, which is the first vowel, ide, ornamental and inclusive particle, kendu, continuative particle, takche, differentiating and inclusive particles, shedu, ablative, separating and emphasis particles, chungkung. Just by the name chungkung, it just means ablative. It doesn't mean separating or emphasis, but we must understand that separating an emphasis particle as a name is inferential to this, rather than apparent. Vocative particles, these are the 8 dependent particles, depending on the suffix letter. Independent particles, so these are te, rawache. So the first one is particle of ni, nida, a particle of tang, tangdra, particle of te, tedra, the generalized particles, chidra, and we're going to see some examples of the companion words in this particular particle. So the possessing particle, tagdra. Some of you have given me examples of the companion word in the homework or assignment, but you have mistook them or confused them with the possessing particle. Then we have the, for example, shinke, carpenter, shinke. It's a possessive particle and not a companion word. Then we have negative particle, gagda. So these are the connective particles. Now the grammatical cases. Okay, grammatical cases. Grammatical case also known as nam ye. So what are so ye normally means to separate. So what are we separating here? What are we trying to separate or just trying to differentiate here? So grammatical cases are statements. So these are sentences, particularly different usage cases actually, which separates 2 names with the help of connective particles. So most of the time it's 2 names. So it's a plural. Normally we don't use plural here to just to make sure that the confusion between the name and the lowercase name doesn't arise. So this is so there is no S here. So we'll just, if I can, so no S here. So we'll just do this. So no S here. It's only name. So please understand that name is both the singular and the plural for the Ming in Tibetan, so that we don't arise any confusion between this and the lowercase name, which has name as a singular, names as a plural. So with the help of connective particles, with the help of the different connective particles, which allow these usage case. So these particles are associated with these 8 different. So these are just 8 different usage cases. There are more than these 8 usage cases regarding the particles. But these are the 8 known as the grammatical case. And each of these has a different particle to be used with them. Different connective particle. When I say particle, I think that there may be confusion there, because particles are also the particles that are not in the 30. So different connective particles, because connective particle is a specified terminology that is associated with 30 only. So therefore, that's the reason we're going to use connective particle only for 30 and no other text. So any other particle that is not in the 30 are not connective particle. Even if they function like a connective particle, we're not going to call them connective particle because they are not specified in 30. So this term, connective particle, is a specified term which is only used with the particles that are stated in 30. Okay, so we have established that. So there are 8 grammatical cases. The first grammatical case, nami tangbo wo tsamtemba. The second grammatical case, nami niba le su chawa. The third grammatical case, nami sumba chedra. The fourth grammatical case, nami shiba gweche. The fifth grammatical case, nami ngapa chungkung. The sixth grammatical case, nami trukpa delta. The seventh grammatical case, nami dumba tene. And finally, the 8th grammatical case, nami geba petra. And we're not going to go in detail right now because each of these will have their own chapter in this text. So therefore, we will learn in depth about them in their particular chapter. So before we move on to the first grammatical case, let me just go as fast as quick as possible with what we have learned till this point. Okay, connective particle are bound morpheme word under the words. It's a type of word which is one of the main teachings of the 30 and are functioning as a conjoining particle between 2 narrations, and these narrations may be name or sentences depending on the usage case. And there are 2 types of connective particles, the dependent connective particles and the independent connective particles, te shenwanche and te rangwanche. The dependent connective particles, or the te shenwanche, are dependent on the factor that these are associated with name, ming, on the basis of having suffix letter. Not only having suffix letter, which suffix letter? There are 10 suffix letter. So for different type of suffix letter, different particle will follow these dependent particles. And which post suffix letter? Is it ta or is it sa? Depending on that, you will see that different post suffix, different connective particle will follow the name. And then the case where it doesn't have any suffix letter. For example, we have dro. We say nga nang la droi in, and sometimes we have seen that. So we have already talked about it so many times. So nang la droi in. So in this case, there is no suffix letter. So we see that this particular particle yakyuguyi is following this. So there are rules pertaining these things, and if you have the text by memorization, then you'll have these rules for your entire life. these texts are very strange. The thing is that if you truly memorize it thoroughly one time, it actually stays with you for a very long time. So therefore, uh, the dependent connective particles depend on two factors. One is the universal factor for both dependent and independent particle, which is connective particle, sorry, which is the usage case, and the other one is specified for only the independent for only the dependent particle, which is the dependency on the suffix letter, which is known as Dajur. So two very important concepts, Dajur and Tunjur. We're going to learn this as we start learning the text, the connective particle, Tunjur and Dajur. These are going to be very important things as we move on. And then we see that there are 8 connective particles. These are the 8, and the 6 independent particle, nidra, tangdra, tedra, chidra, dadra, gagdra. Okay, so 8 grammatical cases. Grammatical cases are nothing but usage case. The thing that we just mentioned in the above, it's a usage case. There are more than 8 usage case, but these are 8 special usage cases that we have brought out of those other usage cases. And these 8 usage cases have different criteria to be fulfilled. And the other thing is that in these usage cases, normally it just separates to name. So no sentences or no phrase, just to name. So these are the first grammar. So let me just read the Tibetan. So these are the 8 different grammatical cases. Okay, so let us start with today's lesson. Actually, that was also today's lesson, but let us start with this, which is the first grammatical case. And let's see how much we can cover. Probably we will be able to finish the first grammatical case and the name. So the first grammatical case is called 我怎么对吧? 我怎么对吧 means to show or to depict or to represent only. So it only represents, or it only it only depicts, or it only shows. It does nothing. It only represents phenomena. So it only represents phenomena. So what are the things that represents phenomena? The names. The name Ming. It's Mingxi. So the Mingxi are the only thing that represents phenomena. When I say represent phenomena, what I mean is, as in the definition it states, the grammatical case, the first grammatical case is a grammatical case which depicts or shows or represents the meaning of or the essence of a term individually. So it only shows a meaning. It only represents it represents a name only. It represents an essence only, a meaning only, nothing else. And another thing that's important is individually. This is going to be very important words here. Individually. What does it mean? Why shouldn't we just say that it depicts or the meaning or the essence of a term only? Why is it important to say individually? Now that is the case where we have to understand that every name or everything. So for example, a table. What is a table? A table is the name of a phenomena which is not a table. So if something is a table, it means that it is. So here we are going to use some of the logics. so that we usually use to identify things, differentiate things as a specified phenomena, individual phenomena. So what's a table? So normally every phenomena, including table, is a table. But every phenomena other than table are not table. So a chair is not a table. But if we say this is not a table, it doesn't mean that it's a chair. But we know that chair is one of the things which is not a table, right? So here we understand that the table is something that's so table. If we say the table is not a chair, that's true. But logically speaking, if something is not a chair, it doesn't mean that it's a table. It could be a house, it could be a car, it could be anything. So here I'm trying to tell you the importance of the usage of word individually. Here, why it was used. And I'm very sorry if this becomes too complicated, but this is something that's necessary. And I cannot avoid this concept here because this is the essence of the first grammatical case. So if you don't understand, please make sure that you ask the question to me again and again until you understand this concept. Because this is the beauty of the first grammatical case and the name. The concept of name in Tibetan is very different from the concept of name in many other languages. Because when we talk about name, we don't talk just about the name as a representation only. We talk about name as a representation of the existence of an object in a way that it is existing without mixing its existence with, it can exist on dependency of its name without mixing it with any other phenomena. So for example, like I said, a table, we may normally say that table is not a chair, and that's a very fine statement. But then the argument comes, if it's not a chair, is it a table? No, that's not true. If it's not a chair, it doesn't mean that it's a table. It could be a house, it could be a ground, it could be anything. Any possible existing phenomena could be there. So what individualizes a chair? What individualizes a chair is that chair is not it's not it's not all the phenomena which is not a chair. So it's not a chair. So what chair is it's not a chair. And the reason why I'm saying it's not a chair, because it's the negation of every phenomena that is not a chair. So that is the reason why we have individually here. That's the reason why we say individually, because it is the negation of every other phenomena which is not a chair. So when we say anything, like for example, if we say a vase, what is a vase? Vase is not a vase. We won't say that vase is so we can normally say vase is a vase, and that's one way to define it. But then it doesn't talk about the fact that it is individual. The individuality doesn't come when we say vase is a vase. It just means vase is a vase. That's it. It doesn't talk about the individuality of the term. But the individuality is shown when we say that the vase is not a vase. Why? Because not a vase means all the phenomena that's not a vase. It could be anything, any existing phenomena that's not a vase. And then we're negating everything. We're saying, no, all of these are not vase. And then when we negate everything and when we take all of these away, we have this individual term, which is vase. And when I say individual, it doesn't, so make sure that it should be understood that it has its own, it has a certain identity to it of being a vase, which is not a table, not a chair, not a house, not a car, but a vase. So therefore, we must understand when we say term individually, it means that these terms do not associate do not mix their existence with any other term. That these terms that I've said, for example, for was we say pumba. If I say pumba, it only means pumba and nothing else. So therefore, this is the ability for the first grammatical case, that it is able to show the meaning or essence of a term individually. So the first grammatical case is classified as name, words, or statements. So there's something missing here. So also statements. So name, words, and statement. But statements are a combination of name and word. So that could also be argued there. So please understand that concept that I said. It's so I will repeat this concept. So once more. When we say individually, it means that that name represents nothing else but that particular thing. But when we say that this is a vase, so this is more of a this comes from more of a Tibetan way of thinking about it. Because normally when we say in English, it makes sense because it's a to be verb. So this is a vase means that this is a vase. It's to be a vase. But then in Tibetan way of thinking, we try to think it in a different way. So when we look at it and analyze it, we understand that what is vase? It's an individual representation which is not associated, not. So when I say independent, please be careful. It doesn't mean that it doesn't depend. It just says that the name refers to an individual. So I'm not going to use individual. Independent. I'm going to use individual. So it's an individual term which represents an individual phenomena. So therefore, a way to define that individuality could be that it is not a vase. Saying that it is not all the phenomena that's not a vase. So when we say what is not a vase, there is endless phenomena that is not a vase. And negating everything. Now what is it? It is individual. So make sure that you're making these notes because this is nowhere to be found in this material. So when I said you have to make your individual note, this is what I was talking about. That these things which are coming now are not in the note. So, but these are important. So therefore, make sure that you're writing everything that I said right now. So therefore, this is classified as name, words, or combination of these, which are statement, and sometimes paragraph too. So first, name are free morphemes used to represent a phenomena using a term. The name functions to only represent a phenomenon. So this is the difference between the word and name here. So we see that here we see the essence of an individual, and I have given the name of a phenomena that's that's an object. But when we talk about words, we're talking not only about objects, we also talk about actions. We talk about characteristics. So these are also to be considered here. So first, name are free morphemes used to represent a phenomena using a term. So we represent a phenomena like a vase by using a term that's vase, which is individual. And the name functions to only a phenomena and neither shows an action done by phenomena nor shows a quality of a characteristic of a phenomena. So when we say that name, so here it's the more technical grammatical aspect of this is that when we say the name, we must only represent, it only represents the object. It doesn't talk about the characteristic or the action done by it. Right? So when we say a vase, we're not talking that, oh, the vase is holding a water right now. Or we're not saying, oh, this is a red vase, or oh, it's a beautiful vase. No, we're only saying vase. And things like holding water or a beautiful vase or red vase are all characteristic and action that is added to this representation. But when we are saying the name that is Mingzik, it only functions as to tell the name of the phenomena, nothing else. So for example, if I say Tashi, which is the name of a person, my only intention is to represent Tashi as this name. Definitely a Tashi that I know. So represent Tashi by this name. I'm not saying Tashi is doing this. I'm not saying Tashi is a handsome boy or Tashi is a kind-hearted boy or Tashi is a naughty boy, a mischievous boy. No, I'm just saying Tashi, and that represents the phenomena. It does nothing else. So this is the grammatical concept. Remember to differentiate between the grammatical concept and the normal day-to-day view of logic. Normally, when we say Tashi, we'll say, we know that when you say Tashi, he's a boy that has a dog. Definitely, that is because you are familiar with Tashi, and what you're doing is you're creating that image in your brain, and then you're saying that this is Tashi. Definitely, but when it comes to grammar, we don't say that just by saying the name, all of those characteristics associated with Tashi is being represented. No, we just say that the phenomena is represented. That's the only function of Mingzik or the name. So this is something that we must understand very thoroughly. It doesn't talk about if Tashi runs fast or Tashi is making food or Tashi is talking. No, it doesn't mean if Tashi is tall, Tashi is short. This is done by other words which have their own function. If only the word Tashi would have been able to do all these functions, then there wouldn't be needing, we wouldn't be needing of those other words at all. Then only the Ming could be able to suffice for everything. But that is not the case. When we write a sentence, we need to talk about the characteristic, we need to talk about the action that is carried out, that particular subject, which is the name. So therefore, we see that that is the difference between, that is the difference that we see in the usage of grammatical sentences. So therefore, the name functions to only represent a phenomena and neither shows an action done by a phenomena nor shows a quality or characteristic of a phenomena. Okay, so another important thing. When we talk about the first grammatical case, the first grammatical case has two parts. The first part is the narration. A narration could be either a name or a word. And then the second part, which is the recompound particle. Whenever we use the first grammatical case, we have the recompound particle always with this. So usage of the recompound particle with the name is known as the first grammatical case. So whenever it's the first grammatical case, there are two parts of the first grammatical case. The first part is the narration, which is either the name or the word. And the second part is the recompound particle. Okay, so we have examples like Tashi, Cho. Tashi is a name of a person. It also means auspiciousness. Cho is a lake, a bigger one. The smaller one are known as Tsiu. Kangri means snow mountain. Okay, so there are two types of name: actual name, Nguyen, and designated name, Tak Minh. Ngu means actual, Ming means name, Tak means to designate, to impute, or to label, and Ming is name. So Nguyen or Tang Ming, actual name and designated name. Okay, first, actual name. Definition. Actual name are the name or names that represents the actual phenomena that it represents. So these are the names of the things that when we say those names, they actually represent that very phenomena. So these are the names that we give to phenomena, and the very name that we use are the names that represents the very phenomena, which we will see that is not the case in the designated name. So what do we mean by this? For example, if we have like metok, it actually represents flower. When we say metok as a flower, it represents the flower. When we say lung, it represents the air. When we say kangpa, it represents the very house. When we say kangpa, we are not thinking about something else, right? So similarly, it's the very name given to the object. Similar. Then we have names. For example, let me give a name. Let's say Chu. Chu would represent a name that is actually the water, right? So these are the actual name, the name that actually represent the phenomena that it is functioning to represent. Okay, can anyone give me one more actual name? Can anyone give me an actual name? You may write it in the chat or you can directly speak it. An actual name, any name in Tibetan of an object, and I will see if it's actual or not. Yes, me. Me is an actual name that represents human beings. So these are actual names. Okay, so there are two types of actual name. Arbitrary actual name, Nguming to Gilgiming, and then derived actual name, Nguming Jirubgiming. So from our own desire to give these names. It doesn't have any logic. It's something that is just given because we wanted to name it that, you know? And then Nguming Jirubgiming, which is the derived actual name, are names which require certain type of logical reasoning to give certain name. So first, the arbitrary name, actual name, which is Nguming Dögilgiming, or arbitrary name, which are not based on any logic or reasoning, but arising arbitrarily. When we say arbitrarily, it's arising randomly from one desire to call it so. So if one wants to, so at the very beginning, if the one who actually invented the spoken language, if he wanted to name Chu Me and sorry, water as Me and Chu as fire, it would have been that way for now. So therefore, these are names which doesn't have any logical basis. These are arbitrarily, these are names that are arising arbitrarily by one's own desire to call it in such a way. There is no reasoning behind that. So therefore, they are called Dugel, which means Duba means wanting or desiring. And Gel means it is being influenced or it's being guided by this desire to name it so. So we understand this as arbitrary actual name. So we have Me, which means fire, Chu, which means water, Ri, which means mountain. Then all of those names, which doesn't have particularly any meaning in Tibetan, are sorry, not meaning, any logic behind naming them, are all arbitrary actual name. So can anyone give me one more example for arbitrary actual name? Anyone?
Sa.
Sa. Okay, so sa is also an arbitrary actual name because it refers to, or it represents, the earth. And there is no logic why it was called sa. So therefore, these are arbitrary names. Now, the second, which is the derived actual name, are actual names which are derived from the arbitrary actual names. So the arbitrary actual names, when they become the basis of the logic, so these are the basis of the logic. And based on these logic, based on these terms, what happens is that we have these other names. Now, using these logics, which are the names, which are arbitrary names, we combine them and then we derive new names. And now these names are more logical and reasonable because now they are based on a name which was already given, and by the logic of these names, we're creating new names. For example, we have Kangri, Chaksho, Pekuk. Okay, so first one. So we observe that the term Kangri is derived from the arbitrary actual name Kang and Ri, which individually means snow and mountain. So Kang means snow and Ri means mountain. Thus, when we combine them, it indicates a meaning that says snow mountain. Kangri means snow mountain because Kang means snow and Ri means mountain. And that is the logic behind the name. And when we say Kangri, we say that, oh, this is a name that is derived from the arbitrary name Kangri. Why do you call it Kangri? Because Kang means snow and Ri means mountain. And since it's a snow mountain, we call it Kangri. And then we say that, oh, so this is the reasoning. So therefore, it's called Jirup. Jirup meaning, which is derived. Derived from what? Derived from the arbitrary names. Derived from the arbitrary. So last time we were talking about these in the companion words. We said that we may see things like Ri, which may associate with other name like Kang. But in these cases, these are not companion words. Why? Because Ri individually is capable of conveying a meaning that is mountain, which in the case of companion word is not possible. So therefore, we see that by this logic, we understand that snow mountain, Kangri, is a derived name, Jiru Kiming, and it's an actual name because when we say Kangri, it actually means the snow mountain. Now you may have questions like, oh, doesn't all names represent the thing that they are named after? This will be answered in a bit. So that's not the case every time. So now the second example, which is Chaksho. We observe that the term Chaksho is derived from the arbitrary name Chak and Shok, which individually means, so Chak means metal, Shok means sheet. So when we combine these two, we have the meaning that is a sheet made of metal or a metal sheet. So we see that this is derived, and the logic why it's called Chaksho is because it has a it is supposed to be a sheet, but the material used here is metal, sometimes alloy too, not always metal. For example, we have most of these are either made of some of these are made of aluminum, sometimes they're made of steel, in which case it becomes alloy. But since we don't, definitely we have the scientific term for alloy, but normally generally we just call it chak, which means every type of metal. So chaksho, which means metal sheet. So we see that this is actual name because it represents that thing, which is the sheet, metal sheet, and it is derived from the arbitrary name. Now, finally, we observe the term pekuk is derived from the arbitrary term petep and kukma, which individually means textbook. And so petep means textbook or book. Normally textbook because pe means example. So pekuk petep means like the textbook. And bag, kukma means bag or yeah, it means a bag. So since we combine both of this, it becomes pekuk, which means a bag to carry textbook. So therefore, pekuk is school bag. Because in school bag, normally we have textbooks. So instead of saying textbook bag, we say school bag because it's normally when we have textbook, we're studying it. So therefore, we go to school. So we see that it is the combination of two arbitrary name, petep and petep. In a way, petep itself is a derived name because pe is example, tep is book. But still, let's not go into that. So we say that petep and kukma both are arbitrary names, and the combination of these makes the word pekuk, which is the school bag. And it actually represents the school bag. Now, the question that may arise, you may say, oh, these represent the actual thing. Then does the other names that we're using does not represent the phenomena itself? How does it not represent it when it's the name and the very function of the name is to represent that phenomena? And I'll say that definitely it represents the phenomena, but the name which has an actual phenomena which it represents could be used to label something else. Okay, so we're going to clarify it here. So what second designated name are names that don't represent the actual phenomena, meaning when we use these names doesn't represent the actual phenomena, but a name designated to a phenomena. So it's a name that is designated to a phenomena. So we take a name of something else and then we label it to something else. So designated are of two types. Designated names are of two types: arbitrary designated, and derived designated name, the one which has some reasoning and one which doesn't have any reasoning or logic. So first, arbitrary designated name are designated name which are not based on any logic or reasoning, but arising arbitrarily from one's desire to call it so. So, for example, if we call someone sitting, if we call a person sitting itself means long life. But when we call a person sitting, it doesn't mean that that person is the actual long life, or it doesn't even mean that that person will live a long life. It's just a name that's given to that person. Similarly, sometimes we have names for dogs. We call them senge. And senge itself means lion. And when we call a dog senge, it doesn't mean that the dog is a lion. It's just a name that we wanted to give the dog. Sometimes it could be a reasonable if, for example, if it's a Tibetan Mastiff and it's a very big dog and it has like these mane which looks like of the lion. Yes, like Hamo for goddess. When we call a person Hamo, we have Tibetan people with name Hamo, right? So when we call them Hamo, it doesn't mean that that person is a goddess, but it's a name given to them. But then it's all about thinking. Some may just take it and then live it through life's philosophy, you know. So so therefore, these are names which doesn't actually represent the actual thing. You see, and then some people have the name Sangye, which is Buddha. Doesn't mean, I mean, this I cannot say 100%. I mean, who knows? Some of those who have that name might be a manifestation of a Buddha. But let's say if it was not, then it doesn't mean that the person is a Buddha. It's just a name given to them. But sometimes, like for example, I gave you the example, like if there's this big Tibetan Mastiff, this big dog with mane, with a very large mane, very thick mane, like a lion. And then we call it Senge. That is logical because it has the mane and everything, those physical features that gives us the understanding that the dog looks like a lion. So we may call it in that way. So just like Farizala just gave an example, someone please give me an example for designated name, arbitrary designated name in Tibetan. So someone give me an example. So a name that doesn't represent the actual thing, but it's just a name given to someone or something.
Sonam.
Sonam, wonderful. And then what do we have? Dorje. Okay, so Dorje is also a name, and Sonam is also a name. So Sonam means merit, and Dorje means Vajra. So it doesn't mean that they are the actual thing, but it's a name given to them. And if they want to take the name as a auspicious sign and live their name, then it's a wonderful thing. So second, derived designated name as designated name are designated name which are derived from arbitrary designated name on arbitrary actual name. These are arbitrary. So even though we call it derived, it's more or less like it's a logical and reasonable way to designate a name. So this definition has changed. I will change this definition and send it to you. Because for example, Mila when we call someone a fox, a person a fox, it doesn't mean that their physical feature looks like a fox. It means that this person has a certain characteristic of being cunning and being manipulative. So we call them fox, like Wamo. Right? And then we have, like, for example, we have like for some dogs, we call them tomchuk. Tomchuk means a bear cub. So sometimes certain dogs could be like they may have fur and their physical feature might be quite resembling of that of the dog. In those cases, we may call them tomchuk, and it's a reasonable and logical thing to do. So, does anyone wants to give me derived name? Does anyone wants to give me a derived name? The derived designated name. A name that's given to someone, but with an intention or a logic.
Droma, the one who liberates, Tara. Therefore,
Droma.
Yeah.
To the Tara. Okay.
Yes.
Because they liberate, so Tulma. Okay. Another name. Does anyone have another name, designated name? This is also a derived designated name. Another example. Does anyone have another example?
Drolka.
Drulka. And what is the logic of that name?
Compassion. White Tara.
Yes, so to White Tara. Okay, so compassion to the White Tara. So Drulkar is because, but that actually becomes a derived actual name. You see, Drulkar. Tulma is actually a name that is given because Taras are the liberator. So that's why it becomes a designative name rather than an actual name. But Dulkar and Dulma are all actual names. So let me just give you a name. It's a little bit mischievous name. So if someone has, so this doesn't it isn't a term that represents the phenomena itself. But let's say if someone has, like, normally so let's say if someone is very lazy, you see, similar to Wamo, we use so in the time of in the olden times they used a different term, but normally what we use in Tibetan for people who are very lazy, we call them Pakpa, which means pig, which is because laziness. And we see that so therefore this is also a derived designated name. Why? Because it represents a character of the thing, but it doesn't represent the actual thing. So similar to the fox, we have the term for the pig, and this is how we're using that term. So these are all derived designated names. So this is the concept of name, but I think we should still we should still revise it one more time later. So yes, this is today's lesson, and first we will do the memorization, I think. So please choose any number between 1 to 12. So we have 12 here, so let's say 12. So choose any number between 1 to 12. So those who have not participated, please choose any number between 1 to 12. Any number between 1 to 12. Except Ellen Line Yurira. Yes, please choose number between 1 to 12. And those who aren't able to give the memorization test right now, we'll make sure that you give it to us later. But those who are able to give the test right now, please choose a number between 1 to 12. Please memorize it. So very humbly requesting, because if you memorize it, you're going to thank me later because of all of the rules pertaining the Dajjor. You're going to thank me later. So any number between 1 to 12. Lasso. So if you can remember the till the Lardu, it's enough. But yeah, let's try as much as possible. So do we only have 2 people today who are able to give the test? So please, I humbly request everyone to memorize it. 4 lines. Okay, so definitely. 4 lines. If you want to participate, definitely you can do this with the 4 lines. It's okay. So okay, so please choose a number between 1 to 12. Okay, so I can only see 3 numbers, which I hope that I'll see more next time. Okay, so let's choose a number between 1 to 12. Okay, do we have 2? We don't have 2. Generate again. Okay, do we have 12? We don't have 12. Generate again. Do we have 7? No. Do we have 3? Okay, we have 4, which is Farizala. Okay, so you'll have to do your best.
Again, I'll try.
That's so.
I'll try my level best. Yeah. Okay. I just memorized today evening only 4 lines. So let's see.
That's so.
Lama Choktan Irme Pe Jampe Yang La Kutene Tonme Lakshe Sumchu Pe Ningpo Tortu Shepar Cha.
Okay, so but you have missed the first line, the very first line. So you were memorizing from now. Yes. Namo Guru Manju Koshaya. So we start from there. Wonderful. So so it's kudu. So this is something that you have to work on. It's kudu.
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 Du.
Kudu. Kudu. Tu. Ta.
Not the. The.
Du.
The.
It's bhau ta shapkutu da.
Hota shaputu tatu.
Tu.
Tu.
Kutu.
Kudu.
Kutu.
Yes. Okay, so please work on that sound. Otherwise, it's wonderful, and please continue memorizing it each day so that you can memorize the portion, and the portion will update next week. So each 2 weeks we're going to change. So please memorize. Okay, so now any questions regarding today's lesson? Does anyone have any questions regarding? I mean, definitely, I think there might be some questions regarding today's lesson. So, is there any questions regarding today's lesson?
Gela, I have a question.
Yes.
The
Yes.
first grammatical case, as your definition, is a grammatical case which depicts the meaning or essence of a term individually. But then after that, under the first narration, where the actual name and the designated name, there's part where names are given based on the adjective or derived from based on logic or reasoning. So it's grammatical cases.
So you mean to say that since
like you said, chu means water means not water, other things that's beside water, and it's not that.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean the liquid, the viscosity of it and stuff like that. It just means water. But then over here, when we see something that's the name is actually derived from logic and reasoning, how do we not do the derived part?
So you mean that so when we say Kangri, right? So Kangri
Yes,
is a derived name, right?
yes.
So it's derived from it's derived from two arbitrary name, actual name, which is Kang and Ri. But the thing is that when we combine these two, we see that it is given by the logic, which is the arbitrary name. And on the basis of the arbitrary name, we are building this logic. And then now that we have given it name Kangri, it will only represent Kangri and nothing else, right? When we say Kangri,
Yes.
it will represent nothing but Kangri. So we don't see that there is any violation there of the first grammatical case, isn't that? There is no violation there. The actual violation of the definition seems to be there in the designated names. Like I said, the designated names, though may not be the phenomena itself, are being used to represent these. And then if we consider this to be the first grammatical case, then the argument could come is that, oh, but you just said that these are these first cases should be representation of the name itself, and that you cannot use you cannot use the same name to represent something else. But here we are doing that exactly.
Right.
Right?
Because it describes something else.
Yes, it describes a phenomena that's not the actual thing. So in that case, I will say that that is true. That is very true. That it violates the definition of the first grammatical case. But here we have the name under the group which is known as the designated name. So the very definition of these names are that they don't represent the actual phenomena. And what do you mean by not representing the actual phenomena is that the phenomena that is represented by the terms is not represented there. So these becomes like a I cannot say that these are special cases, but we can definitely say that these are a type of the first grammatical case in which it slightly violates this very condition, which is individual. So it's not individual. So in that case, definitely it violates. This is the case where it violates the actual definition. But still, it's a type of name. It's a type of name that's given. So therefore, we can also argue that these are names given to other phenomena. So it's just a name in terms of classification, but not. It's a name in terms of classification and function of name, but not a name in terms of being actual name. And that only name that are the actual names, and the derived names, which we or the only names that are the actual names, and all the designated names are named just for the sake of classification, just because they represent the phenomena, and that there weren't better group to classify them into. We use them as a name. So this could be the argument that I can make in that case, because they do represent a phenomena to which they are designated to. But are they actual names? No, they're not actual names. They are derived by the definition. They are derived. So what does it say? It says that it's a name that is a name which is not representing the actual phenomena, but a name given on the basis of designation. So therefore, we can make the argument that, oh, these are named, but these are named for the sake of unavailability of a better word for these things, because they do represent things, they do function as a name, but these are not actual name. So therefore, we can say these are not actual name, and thus, by this definition, these are named just for classification, and a name just to represent this group. And therefore, the actual name doesn't violate the rule of the first grammatical case. Thus, the rule is not violated. So, if you have any follow-up argument for that, then we can follow, because definitely we see that they violate during the designated name.
Yeah, we need to digest it for a day.
Yes, I definitely see that. And like I said, the point when we were talking about the not phenomena, right? These are some logic that needs time to digest, and these are very important. These are very important logic, and those who have not understood that logic, please question me on that, because I always tell you that grammar has a very important role in logics. When it comes to Tibetan, it has a very important role in logic, and you're going to enjoy grammar more if you are able to understand those logics. And these logics you can also carry on to analyze things, very important things. So therefore, when I say a vase is not a vase, it's not a way for me to complicate the statement. I'm not doing it to complicate my statement. No, I'm doing it so that I can establish the idea of individual representation. So therefore, let me repeat this one more time. When I say a vase is not a vase, what it does is that it negates, it confirms the non-existence as a representation of all the phenomena that's not a vase. Thus, at the end, confirming the existence of vase as representation by the name vase individually. So yes, so any questions you have regarding that very logical tool? We have already learned one logical tool, which was of the Musumushi that we learned, the 3 of kind, 4 of kind, mutual inclusive, mutual exclusive. So when we talk about these logical tools, if you have questions, make sure you ask me. And if you can also ask, like if you have someone who also understand these, you can ask them also. You can take more than one opinion on this. And if there is contradiction, that's more fun. Then we can even discuss more on those. So therefore, please take time to digest these concepts. Very important concept. It's not like a concept that we can just overlook. It's very important concept. This builds the very perspective of existence of phenomena. As an when I say individual, doesn't mean it's not dependent. It's an individual representation. So there is a difference between individual representation by terminology and independent existence. Very different concept. These two are totally different concepts. So therefore, if you have any questions regarding that, please make sure you ask me. And does anyone have more questions? Any questions regarding today's lesson? And if today's lesson has become a little more heavier than the former ones, then it means that today's lesson was more enjoyable and it was more fun of a lesson, and that we will have many more of these fun lessons in this class. And therefore, the only thing that is truly going to help you is asking questions when you don't understand. Whenever in a day, if you want to ask questions, you may ask them. So therefore, okay, so any questions, any more questions regarding today's lesson of connective particle, grammatical case, and the first case and name? Does anyone have any question?
Gilla, I have two questions. One question is when you're negating it, you're not, you are negating and then again negating. Double negation, it actually affirms or makes the vase a positive.
Yes, the double negation, what it does, it affirms the, it becomes an affirming negation. So we may say not, But in Tibetan, let me write what it is in Tibetan. It is we are going to use this one because this is the affirming negation. There are two negation, non-affirming and affirming. The first one is non-affirming negation. And the second one is the affirming negation, which is the affirming of the first negation. So not means not means everything that's not the was is not it, which whatever this is. So let's understand this as a phenomena that we are going to identify. So we say that it is not a was. So what we mean is that whatever it is, it. So it's easier to understand it that way. We have not confirmed its existence as anything right now. It is affirmed through the negation of everything which is not a was. So when we negate everything that's not a was, we're left with only one thing, that is the was. So therefore, it is a was. So therefore, two negation, but the first one is the non-affirming negation, which is the negation of all the phenomena that is not a was. And the second one is the affirming negation, which is the was itself, which is not a was. So in Tibetan, we see this more clearly because we have these two negations, right? So by the term, the first term is the non-affirming negation, and main is the affirming negation, thus affirming the was.
Thank you, Genla. And the other thing I want to ask you, the second question is, you did mention when we started with the definition of the first grammatical case, you said then this doesn't talk about any quality or characteristics or action of an object, right? And it is only the name of the phenomena. Now, then again, at the
no, because not for the first grammatical case. First grammatical case, we also have words, right?
Right.
So that might have been a slip of the tongue. It is only for the name. It's not for the first grammatical case. For the first grammatical case, there are words, and words have. So we must understand that these words only depict the meaning and the essence of term individually. That's the only definition of the first grammatical case. And the one you said has to be associated with name, Mingzik only.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, because I was also wondering about the other part which you were mentioning about this one I didn't understand well. Maybe I'll have to go through it again. Is the derived designated name, where you designate you call the person, say you give an example, designate a person with a name for fox due to the characteristics.
Yes.
So
here
you are saying that.
Yes. So like I said, derived designated names are based on the things like the characteristic of someone, And similarly, if someone has a big nose, we call them nache, which means big nose. These are all derived designated names, right? But these derived designated names are given on the basis of that particular characteristic. But still, it doesn't represent that characteristic. It represents the person, right?
Yes. Yes.
So when we call someone a fox, it doesn't mean that we're defining the person. We're defining the person. Definitely, the name, when we say fox, it has a certain leverage which defines the person as the fox, right? But still, this defining and the defining by the adjective are quite different. So those are different characteristics. So, but still, fox is a name and not an adjective, right?
Right.
So there's a somewhat reference to it, but yes, still it's not defining an actual character by the usage of the word. So my argument would be, since there is no usage of the actual adjective, this does not violate the definition of name.
Ginla, we have to really go through this again once more time.
Yes, I'll make sure that we go through this one more time. And the thing is that there will be many arguments regarding these things. When I say argument, I mean these things that you just asked me questions, right? And through those, there will be like I will have to, because this is my committed this particular definition that you see here of the name, right? That neither shows an action done by a phenomena nor shows a quality or characteristic of phenomena. This is my prime commitment to this to the definition of name. So right now, what happened is that you're asking me a question which seems to be contradicting or violating that definition, right? So then I'll have to come up with the argument that supports my definition. My argument was that it doesn't violate it because there is no actual usage of an adjective here. Wamo is a name, so it's not an adjective. And the person, me, is also a name. If I call someone Wamo, the person, it's a name. The person itself designated to it becomes a name. Wamo becomes a name. So there is no actual usage of the adjective. So therefore, this designated name does not violate the rule, and that would be my argument to support my definition.
Yeah, at the moment I'm not been able to give any counter of that, so I'll have to rethink.
So you have to rethink and make sure that you come with a counter, because the thing is, more counter you come up with, the more argument I will make, and then we will be able to analyze it more thoroughly. This is why I told you that this chapter may take more time, because it's not only about covering this chapter, it's about trying to analyze all aspects to understand this thoroughly. So that at the end of this entire this chapter, you have no doubts. I mean, definitely there won't be a case that you'll have no doubts about it. There might be some doubt, but maximum the majority of the doubts would be cleared. That is the reason why these chapters will take more time, because there's so much more thinking to be done. And therefore, another thing that I will urge every one of you and most humbly request you is make questions on these. When you are thinking tonight about these things that I have said, make questions. If you don't understand, mark them and then say, oh, next class I'm going to ask this question. Next class I'm going to, this person said this, but this becomes contradictory to this. How is it? Next time I'm going to make sure that I ask this question, and then we can have a sort of analysis. So I'm planning, so the best way to get rid of most of the doubt is through these wonderful arguments. You bring argument, I bring my argument, and at the end, definitely some of the arguments that you will bring will have a greater leverage to what I say. In those cases, we'll change a little bit about it, It's through analysis we're trying to establish this understanding of grammatical structure. I will give you the prime I'll give you the prime committed definition, and then we argue on it from different aspects, and then we establish the definition at the end. So this is how we're going to work, and it's going to take more time, but at the end, you would have gone thoroughly through this. This thing would be like your cup of tea, I think that you can of it. And this is a thing that I'm working for. That is the reason why we are planning to spend at least a year on this. You may see that the actual text is like 1 or 2 pages long, but I'm saying 1 year. So how is it going to be 1 year or 1.5 year? Because we're going to analyze it thoroughly as much as we can. And the most important thing is contribution from every one of you in the questions. The more you contribute in the questions, the more we learn, because we are all individual, thinking things on a different perspective. So please make sure that as you go through with today's lesson and recordings, make sure that you have questions. And I always appreciate questions. So therefore, please think thoroughly about these. And then one more question. Does anyone have one more question? Let's go. Does anyone have more questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I have very small question. Because
Lasso.
I don't understand what is bus.
Which one?
I didn't understand the word. And what is bus? What did you say? What is?
This. Your question is regarding which word?
Sorry, I couldn't hear because
So you didn't you couldn't hear?
Yes. So okay, I check later.
Okay. So so you didn't hear what I said earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay. So please check the recording. Definitely check the recording. So yes. So anyone has any questions? And the thing is that the lessons that we're going to have from now on will all be very thoroughly analyzed, so that at the end we will be able to nullify most of the doubts, confusion, right? So this is why this is something that we're going to do, so that we thoroughly understand this.
Genla, can we make something? This is for me. I just want to do the names which you have given, the actual name designate. Can I, from my own mind, think and give my own example to see whether what I'm thinking is right or wrong?
Definitely, you can definitely offer those examples. So so you want to give examples for designated actual name, right? Actual name and designated
actual name, yeah, designated name, then all the subsections of that also. Just to see whether I understood or not, because you've given your examples.
Yes.
Few examples. I just want to see whether what I'm thinking is correct or wrong.
Okay, so you want to give the example now?
No, not now. I'll send it to you directly. Yeah.
Okay, so definitely you can do that. So and definitely we're going to have assignment on this. So everyone can. So I mean, let's do this. Let's have a simpler assignment for this week. All of you to give me examples. So 4 examples each for actual, derived, derived, designated, derived, designated name. So 4 examples each on your own, not from the text, by your own. And if you have any questions regarding these, ask me directly. I will answer all of your questions and inquiry related to today's lesson, because I know that today's lesson was more heavier in comparison, and the coming lessons will have more usage cases. Some will be so there will be more usage cases to come. So therefore, the thing is that your best companion in this journey will be asking questions and doing the assignments, revising and memorizing the text. So if you do this thoroughly, then I think that there won't be any anything that's going to cause you problem with the lesson. And at the end of the lesson, though you see that there is like so many things to do, but at the end of the lesson, you'll have you'll most probably you'll feel that it was totally worth it, all of the hardship that you had to go through because of the amount of things that you understood, and most of them will be coming through your own arguments. And the good things about those things is that it stays very well in your head for a very long time. And then one of the main thing about this class that you're learning is that later on to provide to those who wants to study. So things you learn from here are all to be given to others when they need it, you know? That's one of the most important intention of this particular class. So please study well with the intention that one day you have to teach it to someone, you know, who truly wants to learn this. Okay, so there seems to be no more questions. So in that case, please make sure that you revise, you ask me questions, and the next class we're going to still be doing first grammatical case, name and recompound particle. Recompound particles can come later. It's not that difficult. Recompound particles are not that difficult. It's just a single usage case. But the concept of name is the most difficult concept here. So therefore, we're going thoroughly with the concept of name and Mingzik and this first grammatical case. But it's called some, and that some means merely or only showing the essence of the word. But that could be understood in a very wonderful way later on. But that will come with your own personal understanding of the text. And that will come eventually at your own time. So this time, the more focus to be understood as at the concept of individually and the concept of name. So please rewatch the recording, study well. And if you have questions, ask in the group. You know that whenever you have asked question, I'm always there. So, okay, so I think this will be it for today. And thank you for joining in. And I hope that today's lesson was also beneficial to you. And I will see you tomorrow for the basic conversation class. And then on Thursday for exactly the same class. And the homeworks will be sent by tomorrow. And if you have questions, send them in and I'll answer them. But make sure that you send them before 3 o'clock tomorrow, because then after 3 o'clock, I will have to prepare for a bit for tomorrow's lesson also. And I think this is it. I think Petunia has sent some of those quiz in the group. So please look at those. Those are also quite beneficial for the basic Tibetan conversation class, those flashcards. And also memorize the new text that was sent, the new portion from the Lobchung Tai. And the explanations are also done for them. So listen to the explanation, listen to the recording and memorize them. Okay, so this is it for today. And thank you very much for joining in. And I will see you tomorrow. Lasso.